There's a phrase I return to often. What it's really become for me is kind of like a reminder or an affirmation, or it could be a benediction at the end of my day. The phrase is rooted and rising. The reason why this is important is because it's talking about two movements happening simultaneously. So we're both being anchored while we are ascending. We are being held while we are becoming. It's what the fern, the Aya, represents. It doesn't choose between depth or height. It doesn't separate the stability from stretching and growing. It talks about doing both always at the same time. And that is also how we are built. So today, as we go into episode 16, we are going to be talking about and reflecting on what it means to be rooted and rising at the same time. We often talk about the fact that we are healing loudly and living softly. And the reason why we are talking about rooted and rising is because healing is not a destination, it is your rhythm. So, you, resilient one, are right on time. Welcome to the IOA. This is the IOA podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Welcome back, resilient family. If this is your first time here at the IOA, I am Dr. Malaika and I am your host, and we want to welcome you to this circle of healing that we have created. I want to remind you that you are not here by accident. And if you've been walking this road with me since episode 1, I want to thank you for going on this journey with me. If this is your first time, again, welcome. We are so glad to have you with us. You have really shown up for me in this space, and you've also shown up for yourself, and that's what's most important. You're showing up to do the work, not just for yourself, but also for the collective. And the collective is what matters. As I said, this is episode number 16. We are talking about rooted and rising. And so far this season, we have covered a lot of things. We have covered understanding how to be rooted and not rushing. And I think that the fact that we started there and that we are going into this episode, number 16, towards the end of season 1, it is applicable for us to talk about when we're not rushing and we're rooted. That means we have the ability to also rise. So we've talked about, roots, rituals, rest, grief, joy. We've talked about the voice. We've talked about the body and blooming. And then last week we talked about rest, which I think is still something that we can never talk about enough. It is important to our ability to be able to heal. So as we've moved through these different episodes and talked about different things that are important, we are now going to pause and reflect on combining these things together in a way that pushes us forward for the rest of season number 1. We're going to reflect, we're going to honor what we've already built so far together, and we're going to prepare for the things that are going to come next. This particular episode is one that I consider an episode of integration. You're taking a lot of the things that you've learned in previous episodes to allow you to be able to grow and move forward. So, as always, we know that it's really important for us to get this message out. And so I want to share with you, if you haven't done so already, please like, please subscribe, please share the podcast, because that is the way that we get this information to those who need to be able to heal together in community and to be able to understand what we have going on. So remember, we are going to like, we are going to share, we're going to subscribe, and remember all the different places where you can find the podcast. You can find it for video form if you want to watch it on YouTube. If you want to listen at any place that you have the availability, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other place where you get your podcasts. So let's just remember that we are going to start off looking back with gratitude because gratitude is really important. Our ability to be thankful for what we do have as we're growing towards the things that we desire to have is really, really important. And so, part of gratitude is being intentional. And with that intention, you have to be able to name the things that have shifted in you and celebrate that while you are waiting to reclaim things and while you are also anchoring yourself so that you can rise for the things that are trying to grow and to try to be underway. So, as usual, we are going to start with some breathing. So take a breath really quickly. I want you to settle in. Whatever you need to do to be prepared for this journey, we're going to take this episode. If you want to get you some water, hydrate yourself, get comfortable. This is absolutely your time because remember, the root is important. Having the stability is important. And the next part of this journey is us growing into who we are meant to be. So we are going to take a quick break and we will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. And we are going to get started where we began the show with the root. And so we need to look back to the root and understand what it means. In episode 1, I introduced you all to the Aya, which is the fern. And it is a quiet, resilient plant that has the ability to grow in shade. It grows in cracks. It grows in places that are not tended to, in places that are often overlooked. It is considered in Andinkra culture the symbol of endurance, survival, and dignity. And I think that's the reason why I like it so much and was drawn to it as a symbol. Because what it talks about is our ability to thrive in conditions that weren't designed for us to bloom in. And I think that that's really important. That's where our journey with the IOA podcast began. It began with us having a reclamation of our resilience, a remembering of what is built inside of us. It's not the kind of resilience that grinds you down, but it's the kind that grounds you in something that is deeper. It's basically saying that no matter what you're going through, you will not be uprooted and you're not defined by what has tried to break you. And so I want you to think about right now how to affirm yourself to remember that you grow because the soil that you've been planted in, not in spite of the soil that you've been planted in. And so sometimes we often feel as if all the things that happen in our life are bad and not realizing that those life experiences are your soil. And so that soil is important. It's part of your journey, and you cannot become who you're meant to be in spite of those experiences. And so, back in episode 1, I think one of the questions that was paramount that I asked you that I want to bring back again is what are your roots? And so, this gets into more than just your ancestry. This gets into more than just where you are descended from, what your lineage is. Yes, our ancestry is important, it's sacred to who we are, but part of your roots are your values. What are your practices and customs and rituals? What are your non negotiables? And those are the things that are important to identify because they keep you steady. And they keep you steady when a world is spinning out of control. And I don't know about you, but the way the world is happening, especially here in our country, things are spinning and tumultuous. The people that you're connected to, the people that you have descended from, the rituals that you have, the truths that you hold, all of these things are the anchors and the roots that are important. So take a second. I want you to really think about it. What grounds you? What holds you when everything else in your life is uncertain? Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. What is it that you go to when you're in these moments? Maybe it's prayer, that quiet space that you go to commune with God. Maybe it's a literal garden, like you go outside and you tend to your flowers and your plants and your trees. Maybe it's that grandparent's voice that you hear in your head, even if she's no longer here with you physically. Or maybe it's your favorite playlist that brings you back to yourself. Me personally, I have a morning routine. My morning routine is I go into the gym and I exercise my body and I build strength and resilience physically. And that reminds me that before the world can tell me who I am, before the world can try to put me on a path and dictate the pace, I tell the world who I am and who I am going to be. So, whatever it is that you have, that is your root. And remember that for you, that root is holy. Don't let someone dictate to you what is the appropriate type of root to have. We also talked about in episode 1 about your soil. Your soil is really, really important. And the soil is important because we are now talking about how do we reclaim wellness our way. Wellness has become an industry. It's become a package. It's become something to monetize. And although I do believe that there's cost associated with wellness, a lot of the things that we need to be whole and to be well cannot be purchased. And so this is something that I want you to remember and to think about. It's not the wellness the way capitalism tells you it's supposed to be, but it's the way our ancestors practiced it. They did it communally, they did it spiritually, they had ritual, they had rhythm, and they had rest. We also talked about the theft of our healing practices, which I think is really important. We need to disrupt colonialism and white supremacy and the work of return. We have to understand that we are remembering what was buried, what was stolen, and all the things that have been tried to be robbed from us in order to bring ourselves back to life and put roots or life back into our roots. Some of you have said through earlier episodes that things have shifted for you because of the work that you have been doing on this journey. And you were giving yourself permission to stop performing wellness and to actually start practicing it. That was your reminder that your rest is your resistance. And that is the reason why I cannot harp enough on what we talked about in episode 15. That rest gives you the ability to be soft. That softness is your strength. And you don't have to grind your way to wholeness. That is not what this is about. I want you to say to yourself, I see you and I honor you, and I'm grateful that I am here. And so I want to tell you, thank you for trusting me to be with you on this journey. And we are going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about the remembering, because sometimes we need to take a step back and remember. I think that is important to the journey to go back and look at where we've come from. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back. And we are going to dig a little bit deeper into the episode, and we're going to talk about the remembering. And so we will look into understanding our stories, understanding the spirit, and understanding the resistance. So, from the root in episode 1 and a little bit further into the season, we talked about going from root into the remembering. And that's where things got a little tender, meaning there were some spaces that probably hadn't been touched that were necessary for us to talk about. That's us naming the things that hurt us. And that is often hard to acknowledge, the spaces that needed to be healed, the spaces that were hard to deal with, the spaces that we've repressed because it's challenging for us to admit to the pains that we have survived. This is us honoring not what has wounded us, but honoring what we've survived. We are reclaiming what was stolen. When we were talking in episode number 15, one of the things that was really important to me is acknowledging the fact that we are not what they tried to steal from us. We are not what they tried to tell us we are. We are who we were created to be. And part of that was acknowledging the fact that many of us were in the cycle that was created for us, that was designed to wear us down and to stop us from being able to rest and recharge. We are reclaiming that. We also talked about the fact that fire is something that, although it can sometimes be challenging, fire brings about clarity in our life. And it's really important for us to acknowledge what that is. We talked about grief. And I know it's challenging to acknowledge the fact that grief gives us clarity, but it does. Sometimes after the fact, we get clarity on things that we probably could not have seen if we were not going through that grief process. What about rage, right? When it's honest and burns away things that are lies or things that are untrue that we're holding on to. What about when our grief is cracking open the things that we need to acknowledge and how they work together and light a path for us? When we look at that, we understand that our bodies are storing all of this information, and that's the reason why the remembering is so important to what we do. Don't forget that your bodies are not just sites of the trauma and the physical wounds and things that you're holding on to, but it also has your memory, your wisdom, and it is the source of your resistance. So you have to treat it as a sacred vessel in this journey of rooting deeper and rising higher. Let's look at healing and how healing means returning to the things that we have overcome, or sometimes returning to the things we are trying to overcome. And when we return to those spaces, we're doing it from a place of reverence. We're not doing it to punish ourselves, but we need to go back there in order to understand what needs to be healed so that we can move forward. Remember that as you're doing this, that your voice is an important part of the process. This is something that I often verbalize in what we are doing. We often talk about the fact that your voice is how you give language and existence to the things that you are going through in your life. So don't use silence to cover up or to hide from the things. We want to have the power of speaking our truths, speak them out loud. So that means that sometimes we code switch. And when we code switch, the code switching is often silencing who we truly are. And we want to honor who we are at our core, not who the world determines for us that we should be. So I want us to look at a little bit of what we talked about when it comes to identity and the things that were stolen, because I think that, again, this is part of your root. It's really important to understand that your identity is where the root starts. And so you have the power to reclaim who you are, and you have the ability to move forward in a way that is powerful and impactful. You get to determine what that will look like. And as you're on this journey of rooting deeper and rising, I want you to remember that part of this remembering and looking back is sometimes looking back with self-compassion on experiences that you've gone through, looking at your inner child and some of that internalized oppression that you have, and giving yourself grace, giving yourself love, looking at yourself in a way of compassion that allows you to rise. So I want you to think about, even in this moment, speaking to a younger version of yourself, thinking about the fact that there may be a time in your past where you didn't feel like you were worthy. That past could be really recent, it could be yesterday. We are trying to break that cycle. We're trying to break the cycle of self abandonment. We're trying to break the cycle of self internalized oppression. We are trying to bring you back home to who you are. This part of the journey is not going to be easy. It's going to be messy. It's going to be raw. It's not going to be the thing that you're going to post on social media, but it's the kind of work that needs to be done in order for you to move up to the next step where you want to go. I guarantee you that this is the type of work that's going to set you free, because you can't rise if you're still carrying shame that was never meant for you to carry. You can't bloom if you're still watering the lies that someone else planted. You have to name those things that are not true. You have to release those things that are not true in order to open up space for the things that are true. And then when you're ready, you get to choose where you will plant next and where you will go. So I ask you, as we end this particular segment, what have you remembered? What truth have you reclaimed? What story are you ready to now rewrite that was once written for you? And as you reflect on that, we're going to take another quick break, and we will come back with our eye of pause for this episode. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to go into our eye of pause for this episode. And so I want us to do it together. And remember how this works. We are going to put one hand over our chest. We are going to feel our belly. And wherever you feel yourself, I want you to touch that spot. So it could be your head, whatever you want to do. All right. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. So here are the prompts for today's eye of pause. And it is aptly titled, Who Am I Rooting For? And not rooting as in cheering on, but rooting as growing roots. Who held space for your becoming? And how can you honor their sacrifice? I want you to think about who was in your circle and who needs the rest that you are now protecting. What part of your story could help someone else rise? And I want you to think on those for just a second. Now, I want to add one more question, and this is kind of my little bonus prompt that I want you to think about. Where are you confusing urgency with purpose? Because purpose is steady, it's consistent, it's goal-oriented. Urgency is often anxious and trying to push you around in ways you do not desire to go. So I want you to take another breath. And when you are ready, come back to yourself, and we are going to go into our next segment. Be back in just a second. Welcome back. And I wanted to give us a reminder of one of the frameworks that you will find in the book, Rooted in Resilience. And so I think that this REST framework is really important for what we are going to do. And so I have given this framework to you in previous episodes, but I wanted to bring it back again because I think that is something that is necessary to take into the week for this particular episode. And so remember that REST is an acronym and it's our framework for rooted living. And so the R is standing for reconnect. So let's talk about what this is important to, how this is important to you. You're reconnecting with your roots. You're reconnecting with your ancestors, those who came before you. You are reconnecting with your values and your authentic self. Rooted in Resilience talks about how important it is for us to be able to identify the foundations of who we are. And so that R is a really important starting point. So I want you to ask yourself, what have you been doing that is out of alignment with who you really are? Because if you know what the root is, right? You know how to reconnect to that root, then you understand when you are out of alignment. And then the next question to follow that up with is, who taught you that you should live this way, which is out of alignment with who you are? And I really want you to think on that. The E in the REST framework is for embody. So what we are embodying is all the healing practices that are necessary for our journey. So we're looking at embodying things that are healing from a mental, physical, and spiritual standpoint. And we're honoring our wholeness as a person. So that means that you're not doing things that make you look productive, but you're doing things that actually connect to the healing journey that you are on and also allowing you to be present in the moment. You're making sure you're drinking your water. You're taking a walk when you just need to decompress. You're praying and meditating. You're stretching or doing something physical. You're calling your friends when you need someone who can calm you down. And you're making sure that's the friend you call, not the one that revs you up. Call the friend that calms you down when you need to be calmed down. Now, let's talk about this S, because remember again, I talked about us giving voice and giving language to the things that are necessary for us to acknowledge. And the S in the framework is for speak. We have to speak the truth. We have to speak it with courage. We have to speak it with clarity. We have to speak it with compassion, even if it is going to be something that is going to be hard. There are a lot of times when what we have to speak, although we can identify it clearly and we know what it needs to be, we know what needs to be said, it doesn't mean that that is an easy thing for us to acknowledge. This is the part where you stop editing yourself and you stop saying, I don't need this, or I try to force yourself into what is palatable for other people. Even if people can accept the version of you that you continue to be who you are. You can be kind and still be clear about your desires and needs. You can be loving and still say no, because sometimes saying no is probably the most loving thing that you can say to another person. Overcommitting could lead to you acting in a way that actually could be more detrimental than saying yes. You can speak the truth without performing it with anger. You can also speak the truth because you don't need to swallow it down. You have the right to be able to speak what is necessary for you. And then the T in the framework is tending. Remember, we got a garden here. So tend to your inner garden and make sure the way that you're tending to your inner garden is through boundaries, through rest, through creativity, through community. All right. Some of you are watering someone else or everybody else, but you find yourself to be dry. Your garden is dry. So today I want you to tend to you. And I want you to know that as you're tending, there's not a timeline on when this journey is going to be done, because I hate to tell you, the journey does not end until you leave here. All right. So tend to you. Don't wait till everything in your life is perfectly aligned or all of your tasks are done. Make sure that you are tending to you constantly and when necessary. And also, you don't tend to you when everyone else is okay. You are the priority. That is really important. So, because your rising is not just about you, it now becomes a medicine that you can use for other people. And so, I want you to remember that the rising is not a performance. And we're going to talk about that because I think that this is really important. So, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about not performing, but rising. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back. And we are going to talk about rising and not performing. So, I wanted to talk about this because I think that this has the communal aspect or the community aspect that I often like to talk about in our episodes. I often like to, at the end of the episode, have something that talks about how we connect in community. And I think a lot of times we perform when we're in community and we're not authentic to who we are. And part of it is because the world treats healing like it's a before or after picture. So when people are watching us, we want to show them that this is the after picture. I'm together, I got it together, and don't realize that that's not rising, that's performance. So if we think about transformation, transformation is only real if there is change happening in some capacity. Public performance says that the change has to be dramatic. It has to be public. It has to be something that people can understand. Real transformation says it could be incremental, and I may not see it and others may not see it, but that is still what is happening. That's not how healing works. Healing sometimes is quiet labor. So that means that when we're in the communal space, that sometimes people will not see openly in real time what is happening because the labor is quiet, it's in the background, it's sacred. It is a reinvention or a reconnection that's happening that's not part of a brand, it's not part of personality, it's not part of these drastic changes, but it's you becoming the better version of you. Not the perfect version of you, but the better version of you. And the reason why I say it's the better version of you, because this version of you still has the kinks, it has the knocks, it has the bruises, it has the healed over, um, when you have, scars left from wounds, those scars are still there. So the healing is not erasing what you went through. The healing integrates that into who you are moving forward. So remember, as you're connected and you're moving about with others, that healing is about illuminating and it's not about disappearing things. We often want things to just go away. We often want this not to be our story. But what we have to realize is that it puts a light on it, it exposes it to us, it allows us to heal that space to where we're no longer triggered by it so that we can be free for somebody else. So don't look to be healed, look to be healing. And that means you're in the process constantly of becoming better and better. You can still learn how to be a better version of yourself without any guilt, which means that you'll still make mistakes, which means that in community, you may not show up the way you need to. which means that sometimes you won't do all the things perfectly. You can still be learning how to receive love and give love without having to feel judged when you're interacting with one another. You can still be learning how to tell the truth without apologizing for your tone, because remember, the journey is happening. Rising is not always the moment that you stand up, but sometimes the rising is the moment that you stop shrinking and reducing yourself. So you are now choosing boundaries, even when you know people will be disappointed. So I want you to think about the rising moment. And when you get to a rising moment, you may have to admit that you need help. Lean into your community and lean into allowing yourself to receive the help. Don't go internal. Don't disconnect. Allow yourself to verbalize what you need and allow community to be present for you the way you need it. That is rooted living. That's rooted living. That's rising. And if no one has told you this, I will tell you this and reaffirm this for you. Your slow progress is still progress. Your quiet growth is still growth. Your nervous system is learning safety still. And because it is doing that, that in itself is a miracle. So give yourself grace, allow your community to be present, and remember that you are rooted in rising. We are going to take a break. And when we come back, we are going to close out the show. We'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to the episode, and we are going to close out. And I want to close out with this. You're not the beginning or the end. And I know that sounds crazy because, yes, we are not the alpha or the omega. But what you are is you are the bridge. If you have been feeling like you are in between, you're in transition, you're not quite who you were and not yet who you're becoming, that's not a problem. That's actually a sacred threshold that you have reached. You're not at the end of your story. You're also not at the beginning of the story. You are in the space where the pages are turning. So that means you get to keep growing, even if it seems quiet. Keep tending to yourself, even when it seems like the progress is super, super slow. Keep choosing what is true for you, even if it makes you uncomfortable and it costs you comfort. Because I want you to understand that rising is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about you returning. The returning that you're doing is to yourself. The returning is to what you have always known and felt in your spirit. I want to thank you for being on this journey with me, because I know that some of the things that we've talked about in this show so far are not easy things to deal with and acknowledge. And making it all the way to episode number 16 with me, I think is an important milestone that not only do I celebrate, but I think that you also need to celebrate, because it is a wonderful achievement for us to do this together. And so I wouldn't be me if I didn't have calls to action. And so I want you to remember that we need you to like and subscribe to the podcast. It's important to get the message out to others. We need you to hold in what you've received and share it with someone else who needs the steady ground right now. I want you to know that you can always come back to these episodes. You can find us again on YouTube. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere your podcasts are found, where you go and you listen to your podcasts. And also remember that I would love, love, love to hear from you. And so it's really important to me that I hear your voice, because I think that is important for you to know that, yes, you hear me speak, But yes, I want to hear from you. And so I want you to remember that I have a SpeakPipe account, which allows you to go in and leave me an actual voicemail. And so that is found at SpeakPipe, PIPE.com/ the IOA. And so I would love to hear from you. And don't forget, as always, you can reach out to the community, find us on Substack, which is our ability to be able to have conversation. You get expansion beyond the episodes, where you get prompts, you get journaling reflection notes, you get expansion on the episode and other concepts within this week. And these are things that you can subscribe to on Substack, and it is the IOA. And so I want to thank you, as always, for being on this journey with me, because again, I do not take it lightly. So as always, I'm Dr. Malaika. I thank you so much for being with us on this journey. Remember that we are healing loudly and we are living softly. Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and take care of others.